My people, something big just happened in the Horn of Africa. On June 23rd, after 5 long years of silence, separation, and simmering tension, the border at Zalambesa between Ethiopia and Eritrea reopened. Imagine tens of thousands of people who fled at the height of the Tigray War, displaced in camps across Ethiopia, now returning home. Not with a press conference, not with government fanfare, but through the will of the people, community elders, local leaders, and everyday citizens who decided that it was time to come home. Thousands flooded the crossing. Families who hadn't seen each other in years embraced. Markets reopened. And for the first time since the Tigray War began, you could hear voices, not gunfire, on both sides of the border. This isn't just a checkpoint opening. It's a symbol. It's a symbol of healing, of resistance, and of what's possible when people lead where politicians stall. But beneath all the emotion, beneath the smiles, the reunions, and the reopened trade routes, there's a deeper story unfolding. This border didn't close because of a traffic jam. It closed because of war, because of a brutal conflict that left tens of thousands dead, displaced millions, and destabilized an entire region. Because of the unresolved tensions between Eritrea, Ethiopia, and Tigray that still simmer beneath the surface. And now it's reopening, but without a formal peace deal, without infrastructure, without any guarantees. Can this moment stick politically, economically, and socially? Who has to commit? And who stands to gain or lose? And will this spark deeper regional shifts or collapse into the very same old tensions? Today on The Breakdown, we're digging into why this moment matters, what risks lie beneath the euphoria, and what comes next for the Horn of Africa. Because make no mistake, this isn't just about a border. It's about whether peace that is built from the bottom up can actually hold. We're going to break it down, but first, a big welcome to all of our new subscribers and members. I'm so glad you're here with us. And if you're watching and haven't joined us yet, consider this your personal invitation. Because here at Planet Genius TV, we're not just building a channel. We're creating a home for global Black stories that are told with truth, with intention, and with care. So if that speaks to you, then be sure to hit subscribe and tap the bell. Also consider joining our membership community or dropping a super thanks to support our channel and help us remain independent and, yes, unapologetic. All right, now let's get into it. Let's start with what just happened. On June 23rd, the Zalambesa border crossing between Ethiopia and Eritrea officially reopened after being closed for 5 years. And what makes this moment especially powerful is how it happened. Not through a presidential handshake, not through a flashy press release, but through grassroots pressure, local elders, community leaders, and regional officials who said, "We've had it. Enough is enough." People came from both sides. Eritrean towns like Senafe and Ethiopian villages in Tigray. They showed up not just to visit family, but to reclaim space, to reopen markets, restart cross-border trade, and reconnect communities that had been artificially and violently torn apart. And they did all of this with little to no involvement from the federal government of either country. That's what makes this moment so rare and so real. Zalambesa isn't just any crossing. It's one of the most symbolically significant and strategically sensitive points on the Ethiopia-Eritrea border. This was one of the front lines during the 1998 to 2000 border war. It was contested again during the Tigray conflict when Eritrean forces entered Ethiopian territory in support of federal troops. And when the Tigray War erupted in 2020, this crossing was shut down physically, but also emotionally. Since then, families have been split, trade routes vanished, and the already fragile relationship between Ethiopia and Eritrea just froze over. So this opening, is not just logistics. It's a statement, a big one. It says that even when governments have failed to build lasting peace, the people haven't given up. But here's the thing. While this is a powerful gesture, it's also incredibly fragile because there's no formal agreement governing this reopening. There's no infrastructure in place. Banking systems are broken, roads damaged, water access is limited. Right now, locals are using both Ethiopian birr and Eritrean nakfa to trade goods. But with no coordinated policy, confusion could quickly spiral into chaos. So yes, this is a breakthrough, but it's also a test of whether this fragile moment of connection can be turned into something durable, a test of whether bottom-up peace can succeed where top-down politics has failed. And the bigger question that we need to ask is whether this symbolic crossing at Zalambesa signals a shift in the region or just a temporary pause before the next storm.
Ethiopia and Eritrea could be headed towards war, officials in northern Ethiopia and regional experts have warned. Such a conflict would signal the death blow to a historic rapprochement between the two longtime foes. And it would also risk creating another humanitarian disaster in the Horn of Africa. Eritrea, a former Italian colony, was annexed by Ethiopia in 1962. Rebel forces led by now President Isaias Afwerki waged a 3-decade armed struggle that secured Eritrea's independence in 1993. The two countries had initially warm ties, but clashes broke out in 1998 over ownership of a disputed border town. An estimated 80,000 people were killed in the subsequent 2 years of war. The two countries remained formally at war until 2018, when Isaias and newly appointed Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed agreed to normalize diplomatic relations and rebuild economic ties. The warnings of conflict stem from fresh instability in Ethiopia's northern Tigray region. A civil war there between 2020 and 2022 led to hundreds of thousands of deaths. During the war, Eritrean forces crossed the border into Tigray to fight in support of Ethiopia's federal army against rebels led by the region's ruling party, the TPLF.
So to understand why this reopening matters so much, you have to understand how we got here. Because this isn't just about a border. It's a scar that's etched into the land by colonizers, deepened by war, and reopened every time politics failed to deliver peace. Let's rewind the clock. In 1993, Eritrea gained its independence from Ethiopia after a brutal 30-year war. It was a hard-fought, hard-won break, celebrated across the continent. But just 5 years later, in 1998, the two countries were back at war. This time over a small town called Badme, and over who controlled which sliver of borderland. That conflict, the Eritrea-Ethiopia border war, lasted until 2000. It killed more than 80,000 people and left both countries bitter, militarized, and deeply suspicious of each other. Even after the shooting stopped, the wounds just didn't heal. A UN commission ruled that Badme rightfully belonged to Eritrea, but Ethiopia refused to hand it over, and the border remained closed from 2000 to 2018. That's nearly 2 decades of frozen hostility. Then came the shift. In 2018, Ethiopia's Prime Minister, Abiy Ahmed, signed a landmark peace agreement with Eritrean President Isaias Afwerki. There were hugs, there were smiles, open borders. The world celebrated. Abiy won the Nobel Peace Prize the following year. But beneath the photo ops, tensions still brewed. By 2020, the fragile peace unraveled again, this time with the outbreak of the Tigray War. Ethiopia's federal government launched a military campaign against the Tigray People's Liberation Front, a powerful political force in northern Ethiopia. And Eritrea, it joined the fight, sending troops into Tigray to back Abiy's offensive. Now, what followed was one of the most devastating conflicts in modern African history. Tens of thousands killed, mass displacement, accusations of atrocities by all sides. And just like that, the Ethiopia Eritrea border slammed shut again. This time, not just because of old disputes, but because of a new war on Tigrayan soil. That's the history that hangs over Zalambesa, a town that's changed hands, hosted armies, buried its dead, and now, maybe, is opening its gates once more. But this history tells us something important. Every time peace seems within reach, politics pulls it back. Every time borders reopen, war based on mistrust finds a way to close them again. So when we see thousands of people crossing that border today, no, we can't take it lightly. They're not just stepping over a line. They're stepping through decades of trauma, memory, and unresolved tension. So why does this matter right now in 2025? Because this border reopening isn't just a symbolic gesture, it's a pressure valve, a fragile but powerful attempt to relieve years of tension, trauma, and economic suffocation in a region that's still recovering from war. Let's start with the human level. One, families reunited. Tens of thousands of people have been cut off from their loved ones for 5 years. Many were displaced during the Tigray War, scattered in camps across Ethiopia, or just plain simply forced into exile. And now, for the first time since 2020, families are crossing the border in both directions to reconnect, to grieve, to begin to build again. Now, that's not just emotional, it's political. Because when borders open, people don't just bring stories, they bring expectations. And that pressure could force governments to act or overreact. Secondly, trade and local economies are restarting. Markets near Zalambesa have started moving again. Goods are flowing. People are using both birr and nakfa, Ethiopian and Eritrean currencies, to buy and sell. That's a big deal. These border towns were once economic lifelines, moving livestock, grain, electronics, clothing. When the borders closed, entire communities lost their income overnight. Now, there is a chance to rebuild that cross-border economy. But without proper regulation, infrastructure, or political support, that informal trade could easily collapse again. Or worse, trigger smuggling, price gouging, or black market instability. Third, local leadership over federal silence. You know, what's really unique about this moment is that it wasn't orchestrated by state leaders. It was driven from the ground up. Elders, mayors, border communities, they took the lead while national government stayed silent. And that tells us something critical. The people are ahead of the politicians. They're choosing peace. They're choosing connection. And they're doing it without waiting for official permission. But let's be honest. That also means that this peace is fragile. It's happening without clear rules, without guarantees, and without the backing of a durable political agreement. And number 4, strategic implications in a shifting region. This isn't happening in a vacuum. Tigray is still unstable. There have been internal power struggles, attempted coups, and armed movements challenging both regional and federal authority. Ethiopia is also quietly renewing its push for access to the Red Sea, reviving debates over Assab port and national trade corridors. Eritrea sees that as a red line, and military buildups in border areas are still ongoing. So while Zalambesa is opening up, the broader region remains on the edge. This border reopening could be the start of a regional thaw or the spark that ignites old fires, especially if federal and regional actors aren't aligned. Bottom line, this isn't just about two countries shaking hands. It's about two nations and one region deciding what kind of future they're going to build and whether they're ready to build it together. So where do we go from here, my people? The border has reopened. The people have spoken. They are jubilating. But if this moment is going to last, if it's going to mean something beyond headlines and hugs, then real steps need to follow. And here's what it's going to take. Number one, there needs to be a formalized border agreement. The governments of Ethiopia and Eritrea need to do what their people already have. Commit to peace in writing. That means a clear framework for how crossings work, security protocols to avoid military misunderstandings, agreed upon rules for trade, travel, and conflict resolution. Without this, one incident, one checkpoint clash, one political misstep could shut the entire thing down again. Invest in infrastructure and services because you can't build peace on broken roads. So both sides must urgently invest in road repairs and transportation corridors, cross-border healthcare and emergency response, mobile banking and currency exchange access, clean water, communication networks. Right now, communities are moving on faith. If governments want this to work and regain the trust of their people, they need to match that faith with resources. And hey, include Tigray in the process. This border touches Tigrayan land. The Tigrayan people are the ones living, trading, and walking through this space. They must be at the table, not just as bystanders, but as equal stakeholders. That means acknowledging Tigray's internal leadership challenges and working with local actors who have legitimacy on the ground. Peace can be imposed from Addis Ababa or from Asmara. It has to be built with the people who live at the intersection of both. And let's recommit to regional diplomacy. Ethiopia, Eritrea, and neighboring countries like Djibouti and Somalia need to revive serious regional diplomacy. Whether it's under the IGAD, the African Union, or a new Horn of Africa-led coalition, there must be a sustained multi-state effort to demilitarize key zones, build joint infrastructure, normalize economic cooperation across borders. The Red Sea shouldn't be a trigger for war. It should be a shared lifeline for trade and development. Finally, there must be truth and accountability for what happened during the Tigray War. Without it, peace will always be built on shaky ground. Now, this doesn't mean trials tomorrow, but it does mean acknowledging what happened, who was harmed, and what justice could look like. Peace is not just the absence of war, it's the presence of dignity. My people, this border reopening is a gift, a glimpse into what Africa could look like if leaders follow their people's lead. If we invest in connection, not conflict. If we treat borders as bridges, not battlegrounds. But it's also a warning because the people have moved first and the politicians, well, they're still behind. Now is the time to catch up, to formalize, to invest, to listen, and to lead because this moment won't wait forever. And now I turn it over to you. What do you think this moment means for Ethiopia and Eritrea and for the entire region? Is it a real step toward lasting peace and stability? Or just a temporary pause in a long, unfinished struggle? Let me know in the comments, and let's have this conversation together. That's it for today's breakdown. If you learned something from this episode, don't forget to like, drop a comment, share with your group chats, and subscribe to our channel for more. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Sandra Babu-Boateng, and until next time, take care. Hey you! Thanks so much for watching this episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, don't forget to subscribe and join the family. Also, visit face2faceafrica.com for your daily news and updates on what's going on within the global Black community so you can stay informed.